So today we're just in the Cortez area doing some rockhounding at a quick little private property that I got permission at. For those who know, I talked with the owner, got permission. I talked about doing a little video and he just said not to kind of, put it on blast. So for respecting the property owner's wishes, I'm gonna keep the name of the property out of this video. Here's the little hiking path up the road cut to the actual area, and this area is known for Tremolite or hornblende, as the owner would say. This was just a piece I found rolled on the side of the shoulder, just a little farther down, but you can see there's some green Tremolite there. I don't have a lot of time to collect here. I've been told it's just for a little bit of time, like an hour, so I'm just going to quickly get up there, grab a couple specimens, as the owner requested only to take a handful of specimens. So I'm gonna do that and just quickly show you this spot. Don't have a lot of time to collect, of course. Just hiking up the trail itself to the main digging spot, you can see that there's just fragments of Tremolite and small little dark green Tremolite crystals just in the actual pathway itself. Now the goal would be to hopefully find a nice intact one. I wouldn't be sad if I just found a nice little thumbnail, because ultimately it's a privilege to collect on properties like this. So don't come expecting to find a really big one or to be able to find a bunch of stuff. Here we can see some of the matrix or host rock that the Tremolite is coming out of. See the crystals in there. Looks to be kind of like a pyroxene skarnish material, or maybe a marble. Not 100% sure. This area is pretty diverse in its kind of occurrences and stuff. But you can see people have been digging in this area. So I'm just going to poke around and see if there's anything, if I can find an interesting little crystal or something, a couple nice little thumbnail specimens. I'll get back to you if I do. So far, got this little partial crystal. It's got a partial termination. Back on it is damaged, but this front side is nice and lustrous and clean. So this area is pretty interesting, but it's a bit hard to find some nice specimens, but I'm sure they're here. But there's you can see there's evidence of Tremolite all over the place. Just finding a good source of it, right? Well, I'll keep poking around for just a little longer. I've got like probably 15 minutes more before I have to leave, so I'll poke around a little bit longer, see if I can get like at least one like nice piece or something out of here. And if not, it's not the end of the world. This was just more of a thing that I was interested in checking out. But you can see there's a whole bunch of like this kind of weathered and fractured Tremolite lying around, and some of it's in pretty decent sized crystals. So we'll quickly check a little bit more and then get out of here. So that's it for this location. I didn't really have a lot of time to collect, so I didn't do a lot of filming, but you can see this place definitely has a lot of Tremolite. There's a lot of discarded material, all that shiny black mineralization, all that stuff is little broken Tremolite crystals. So I'm gonna get going on to the next spot. This video will probably be 2 locations, or a couple locations at least, just to kind of fill it out and keep you guys entertained. But this is it for location 1. Got a couple, nothing spectacular, but a couple little specimens that I'm happy with, so I cannot complain. Back at the car, looking over some of the specimens I took back. Nothing super spectacular. Did find this one terminated crystal, but the terminations are a little wonky on it. But it is terminated. which is cool. So I can't complain. There is a bit of damage on the one side, but you know what? I'll take that. But most of the stuff I found is just like broken crystal bits. Some of them are a little more interesting than others. Some have like some partial terminations, or there might be some single termination crystals in there that are worth it. And then there's just some a little clustery material. Nothing super fantastic. This piece might be interesting. It's got a little bit of calcite in it still. And on this end there's a bunch of terminations, so if I etch away that calcite, maybe we'll get a nice little kind of small cluster. This piece, another kind of cluster piece, but a lot of the clusters are not that great either. This is an interesting piece at least. It's a bunch of smaller tremolites, but then it's also got some like lighter feldspar on it, so that's cool. This piece also kind of found in the same area. Lots of feldspars, pretty clear feldspars actually, with a little bit of the tremolite in the mix. So I can't complain. For an hour, a quick hour, that was not a bad little location. I'm going to keep exploring. I've got some other areas in the Kawarthas that I want to explore, so I'm going to hit those up. I'll probably throw in one of those locations into this video just to, you know, have a full video and to be entertaining for you folks. But I will see you at the next road cut. So here we have my favorite finds cleaned up, and I thought we'd take a look at them. Now, there were a couple chunks where they were covered in calcite, and this was one of them. And it exposed a nice little kind of cluster section of tremolite crystals, and you can see how gemmy some of them are. Though they're not the sharpest or gemmiest tremolite from this location. You can see on the back, here's that pyroxene scarn that I was talking about. So it looks like the tremolite seems to form in these pyroxene scarns. This was another one of those pieces with calcite. This whole section was filled in with calcite, and you can see it's exposed a bunch of really small but really nice dark green lustrous tremolite crystals. You can see how sparkly they are in there. That's pretty cool. I think I'm gonna put this in iron out because this whole section is covered in like this kind of crumbly irony material that on some other pieces I've cleaned off of already with iron out. So I think this one's gonna take a bath in iron out so that we can, because it looks like there's a whole bunch of really small tremolite crystals mixed in with this irony stuff, so I think it'll look even better. But you can see there's some nice crystals in there, and there's that dark green tremolite color that you'd expect from this location. This piece is probably the best crystal plate I found. Now the crystals are on the smaller side, but there are some interesting little feldspar crystals in the mix. This one had a bit of calcite kind of covering this area, so I etched that away, and that exposed some more small tremolite crystals. But you can see, again, these crystals are highly lustrous and very dark green. And then you can see that pyroxene scarn again on the end, this kind of light green pyroxene material. A very cool piece. Very happy with this one. Some of the smaller plate pieces, this one has a couple nice little tremolites and then a nice large feldspar. This one could actually probably use a bit of a bath in acid. It's got some calcite that could be etched away, but overall it's a pretty cool little plate piece. And then this piece with the larger crystal, it is a bit damaged on this side, but I believe this face is one of the original faces. It's like a flattened, elongated kind of tabby crystal. You can somewhat tell, depending on the luster of these things, whether it's been damaged or it's like old damage that's rehealed. I think this one might have been damaged or in formation and then rehealed. But like fresh damage is pretty obvious versus re-healed damage slash regrowth on these crystals. This one has a lot of the small feldspar crystals in the mix, which is interesting. But then it's got a couple nicer sized dark green lustrous tremolites as well. I got a couple pieces that were kind of like these lumpy clusters where it's just a bunch of tremolite crystals all intergrown together. This one was like in a chunk of calcite that I etched out. It's not perfect. There's sections where there's damage, but you can see it is chock full of lustrous tremolite crystals, and it's got a decent sized one over here, and then it's got a bunch of other smaller ones kind of all clustered together. Makes for a nice little cluster. Another partial cluster, you can see there's some damage, like this crystal is broken, so it would have come off of a bigger cluster. But there's some nice crystal terminations in there, and nice intact tremolite crystals, and the color is great, so I thought I'd show it. Then we have some of the single terminated pieces. This one is kind of interesting because you can see actually where it keyed into another crystal, but then this end of the termination is there. Or it could be damage and then this is regrowth. Not 100% sure, but you can see on this end there's some old damage and then there's some new damage where you can kind of see that glossy chipping there. That's the new damage, and then there's old damage as well, so it's a bit hard to tell sometimes, but this one at least has one kind of interesting termination on it. Here's another singly terminated piece where the termination on the one end is kind of flat and it almost looks etched, so I think it got damaged and then was etched later on. So it's a damaged termination that's been etched away, and then we've got a partial termination on this end. But you can just see how lustrous these crystals are, and that's the real draw for the specimens of this location, is because these tremolite crystals are so dark green and lustrous that people really would like a nice large cluster of these crystals in their collection. That would be like a nice centerpiece. Another single termination where it looks like this one has had some regrowth and healing. It's like a duller secondary growth on top of the damage, and then you got old damage on the back here that's been weathered away a bit. But the secondary growth termination is interesting. I like the ones that have weird terminations because I find they tell an interesting story. And this is one of those pieces. Now this piece is not perfect. You can see it has a bunch of damage on it, on the back too. But it's got partial terminations on both ends, and on top, this top termination, it's got a bunch of smaller individual crystals. And because of that, I do like it a lot. I think it'll display nicely still with those individual crystals all clustered on top. And it's still got that really lovely dark green color. But yeah, not all of the specimens are perfect, but beggars can't be choosers. And this is still a very interesting specimen. Here's the largest double terminated crystal I found. It's got one kind of wonky termination where I think this is where another crystal was in, but it doesn't look like it's been in there for a while. And then it's got another even wonkier termination on this end. I think there is just a bit of damage on this end, but there are two terminations on this one. And again, it's got that nice highly lustrous dark green coloration to the crystal, so I can't complain. I'll take a double terminated specimen any day. Now, I did end up taking home a couple small specimens. This was one of them. This is a nice intact double terminated small crystal. So that was fun. A lot of these were just kind of sitting in the soil because people dug them up for the bigger stuff, and then these obviously weren't as interesting to those folks, and so I found a couple little crystals like that where they're near perfect or perfect, but because they are not the big ones, that's not what people went for. Speaking of which, here's a nice little perfect double terminated one. You can see here on the back where it would have been on another larger cluster, but it kind of fell off of the key, so there's just the key mark. But you got this nice sharp dark green lustrous Tremolite crystal with both of its terminations. And then we got this tiny one, which is like a couple stacked on top of each other. This one does have a little bit of damage on the back of this little smaller one, but this larger crystal is all there and intact and double terminated. You can see that lovely dark green. In some of these smaller crystals, there's a little bit more transparency, so you see that lovely dark green shining through. These are quite spectacular Tremolites, I would say. But this brings us to the end of the video. If you like this type of stuff, please do like and subscribe if you haven't already, and please in the comments below let me know what you found the most interesting. This was a really interesting location, even though I didn't get to collect there for a long time. It was only an hour of collecting that I was allowed to do. I still found some very cool specimens, so I cannot complain. I'm very happy with what I found. So thanks again folks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.